All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to This Costa Rican Life. I am your host, Justin McCarter. I'm here today with my friend Captain Pete Bethune. He is the captain of the Modoc, sitting out in the middle of Potrero Bay, a big behemoth ship from World War II. A lot of steel and concrete on board this boat. Pete has a super interesting story with eco-conservation, working with this boat, working with the Costa Rican government, working with the Panamanian government to try to curtail some of the illegal fishing and illegal poaching in the national parks. And thanks for coming, letting me and Tommy aboard, Pete.
Justin, it's good to be here.
Yeah.
Bro. Good to be here.
Cheers. Well, This Costa Rican Life,
Salute.
as always, not yet sponsored by Pilsen, but we hope someday in the future. So
It's not too late.
Yeah, they've got a great opportunity here.
Pilsen, is that the... What's the mate? Imperial is the mate.
Imperial is like the best known one. Pilsen is a slightly higher alcohol content.
All right. Oh, there we go. Happy
so that's
days
the
with
one
that.
I go with. As always, we got Tommy here running the cameras. So if if you need a little backup or questions answered, Tommy's has encyclopedic knowledge
Rightio.
of very few things.
Tommy, don't be
But-
afraid to speak up. The boys are doing some welding downstairs, and if the lights start flickering or you get a bit worried,
I'll let you know.
let us know, all right?
Sounds good.
So tell me about this boat. This was from World War II, and how long have you had it?
So it was built in 1944, went in Texas, down through the canal, across to Japan, and it was at the tail end of World War II. And as it claimed to fame, then there was a big typhoon that came through and wiped out a big chunk of the US fleet. And it spent like 4 months towing various destroyers and aircraft carriers and that around close to Japan. And then after that, it was 25 years with the US Navy, sort of mostly monitoring Russia up through the from Alaska and across there. And then it did about 25 years as a Coast Guard boat, and again monitoring fishing boats. In those days, it was out to 12 nautical miles down the US coastline, from sort of out from Portland, Washington, down to California. And then a guy bought it off them, and he was running tourist gigs up in Alaska, flying wealthy fishermen, and they'd go fishing, and every now and then there was rumours of he had a bunch of pilots would go up there with a bunch of prostitutes and cocaine and spend a week on this boat hanging out up in Alaska.
Right, this boat's been through it all.
Yeah, and then I bought it when I say my non-profit bought it about 3 years ago, and
Earth
we
Race.
did a refit in Mexico and did some conservation work there, and then brought it down to Costa Rica. And I've been coming and going from Costa Rica for well over a decade now, and the thought of coming back here. And luckily for us, we arrived here a little bit before the Corona circus happened, and then it became very problematic for you to go moving boats around because everywhere was
They
closed.
just wanted to stay and probably stay on board as well. They were pretty
Yeah, there was
hardcore
periods
for a while.
there where you weren't allowed in town, and like, hang on, we got to eat. We need to go down and buy some food. In Golfito, we were catching a fair few fish those days in the harbour. But in the end, Costa Rica was a great place for us to ride out the Corona circus.
I loved it. Some part of me wants it to come back again. I was newly married, and we had the beaches to ourselves, and no work and no customers, and and a perfectly valid excuse to not be doing too much. It's kind of nice.
Happy days. It affected our patrols a bit. So just before it, we signed an agreement with Minister Rodriguez. He was the Minister for Manai, or Minister of Environment. And we signed this 3-year agreement with him. But then what happened was the patrols had to stop in Corcovado. There was a limit of 3 people in a group because of the Corona restrictions, and the patrols is absolute minimum 4. And so for a period there wasn't a lot of patrols, but I would say this has been one of the best places to hang out through that whole Corona circus, because the rest of the world was screwed, mate. Wear your mask, don't wear your mask, can travel, can't travel, you need a passport, all the rest of it.
Right.
Costa Rica is a great place to ride there.
Well, there's not so many people here either. While we were walking the beaches with the dogs, I was thinking about the people, in Oakland, California, or in some New York high-rise, same day, different scene. So you signed a contract with Costa Rica, with Manai, to patrol the fishing grounds, as well as poaching and things like that in the national parks?
So the agreement with the minister basically has us supporting the Sinac Rangers, and Sinac is a division of Manai. And so we provide the ship, we provide the Zodiac, we've got a rib, And so that
Rigid inflatable boat for those of you.
that supports them on marine patrols. And then we do some work in the jungle. We've got a Belgian Malinois anti-poaching dogs that tracks people in the jungle, sort of thing. And so
very sweet dog to me, but I've heard it is.
He's a great dog, mate. And the Belgian Malinois it's like a German Shepherd on steroids and speed, mate. Like, they are an absolute marvel of a dog. Super physical, really hard working. They're clever. They've got a great nose on them. Like, his ability to track stuff is quite extraordinary. And so he's been a great asset for us. So we've used him on patrols in Corcovado mainly, and Piedras Blancas a little bit in the south.
Appears to be a great dog for the family and for the boat too.
Beautiful dog, mate. Yeah. He's a rare combination. Like, often you get a dog with a bit of mongrel in him like that. You know, they're not so great family dogs.
Yeah.
In fact, it changed with him. When we first got him, there was two of us trained as handlers. And you know, it's not just about the dog. There's a fair bit of IP tied up in terms of how do you handle a dog to get the best out of him. So there was two of us were handlers, and it was all about me and the second handler. He was indifferent to the rest of the crew. And then he broke his leg. We were doing some training with him in Golfito, and he broke his leg. And basically 6 weeks we would support him when he had to go to the toilet, and other than that, he's lying down. And so what I said to the crew was, if you walk past Upper, make sure Upper's his name, by the way. If you walk past him, you've got to give him a little bit of love.
Yeah.
And after that, he became a much more sort of loving dog. You know, now he's a bit of a slapper these days. Like, I guarantee you walk on the boat, and 10 minutes later he'll be coming in and nuzzling you, and like, come on, give me a bit of a scratch, sort of thing. He's a beautiful dog, but as in terms of his work side as well, he is a great tracker, and he's amazing at holding people. Like, he's really hard. And if you watch, maybe when you want to laugh later, we'll put him on the flight deck and put the sleeve on you.
Yeah,
but he beats you up.
I think we should put it on Tommy. I was thinking we'd put the sleeve on Tommy. Is that cool?
Why do I get put into it?
Well, you know, I wanted to get you a little starring role. I thought that'd be good. Plus, you're taller, so the dog can come up a little bit higher.
Oh, great! Yeah.
No, it'll be fun for the kids to see.
I don't want to do it.
So anyway, the dog is the last thing we sort of provide to Cenac. And so it's a combination of supporting them on marine patrols where they don't have the boats or assets to go, or in some cases, you know, Cenac has been hit quite hard. Like, their budget's got cut. They've still largely got the same number of people, and so that funding has got to be made up from somewhere. And Corona's been tough on government. Like,
well, and there's the hacking, which has been massive for the entire, basically the government, and all support from the government just sort of ceased about 6 months ago. I mean, it's just kind of, they were like, yeah, we don't have it figured out yet. So,
and so what we do is we provide the crew and assets that make the patrols happen. Corcovado, to be fair, they've still got good patrols happening in there, and so we support them with the dog and a couple of handlers.
That's a whole peninsula there, Corcovado.
Yeah. Corcovado, mate, is one of the jewels of this entire globe. Like, it is unbelievable what's in there. It's such an abundance of wildlife. And there are some threats, and you know, Cenac are doing their best to try and stop. There's two main things there. One is illegal mining, and there's a lot of illegal miners.
There's a lot of gold down there, right?
Yeah, tons of gold. Like some of the
That's where the gold is, Tommy. Look at his eyes lighting up.
Yeah, I'm down with that plan.
It's one of the world's great national parks.
Can you tell us exactly where the gold is? It's
just
where
pretty much you could go just about any of the rivers in Corcovado. There is gold in them, and some of them have been mined quite extensively. Some of them are super rich mines. There was a tunnel mine that we found in there, and it went several hundred meters into the rock, and apparently it was a Panamanian gang had been, like, I think they had about 15 gold miners working the thing.
I'm sure they had some of the gold union breaks for those guys.
Oh, it was a pretty sophisticated setup. Wow. They had generators and big water pumps, and they wouldn't run it through the dry season because then the water goes all turbid. It's much easier to find them. But in the wet season, they can operate in there, and it's a bit trickier to find them. So anyhow, the problems in Corcovado, one is certainly a big problem of illegal mining, and the second one is wildlife poaching, and that still happens a fair bit, which is a shame.
What's the main target for poachers? Is like jaguars and like the things they can get.
Jaguar's tough, mate. You're super lucky to ever see a jaguar. Yeah. So, but mostly it's what we call a bushmeat trade, and some of that ends up in restaurants. So, for example, the tipasquinte, which is a super cool little animal.
Is that a big rodent? Like a
you maybe think there's quite a few different ones. Like there's the agouti, which is like you see a few of them around here, like a big guinea pig on steroids.
I gotta say they look delicious.
Soft shell taco, mate. It's illegal, all right.
All right, I understood.
So the tepesquinde is $40 a kilo.
Wow.
$40 a kilo in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of it is used in the restaurant trade. Some of it is people feeding their families. You know, you go and get yourself a peccary, for example.
Yeah.
You know, peccary is like a soft shell taco, mate. They got to taste delicious looking like that.
Actually, Tommy and I, neither of us have any idea what a soft shell tucker is. Not
Taco.
a clue.
Soft shell taco.
Yeah.
Taco shell.
Oh, taco. Okay.
You speaking English?
Man,
over there, or
are
what?
you speaking English? You know, for the last time we talked, we talked for like an hour last week, and you were talking to us, and you were like, "Yeah, I did my TED talk," and Jeff was like, "You did a TikTok?" He was like, "No, a TED talk." Like with the dancing and like. So there's apologies.
That's all right. That's all right. We're all speaking English, kind of.
Yeah, Pilsen doesn't hurt. So peccary is like a.
Peccary is the soft shell taco.
The soft shell taco.
Soft shell taco. So peccary and tapia, of course, you get yourself a tapia when you're doing it. But the problem we've got, you go taking away things like the peccary, the pigs, the deer. That is the main food source for jaguar. So now your jaguar starts going further down the food chain. Now it starts looking at agouti and monkeys, heaven forbid, another thing. And so some people think, oh, we only caught a few pigs or whatever, but it impacts that entire
the whole
ecosystem.
chain. Yeah.
And so it's important that they do get on top of it there. And I'd like to think I come back here in 10 years and Corcovado has assumed its role as one of the world's greatest national parks.
I don't think it's a reading up on your story, and I hope people will click on the links that we've got in this podcast to go a little more in depth into your story. But you had a huge impact on the whaling in Antarctica.
They were crazy days, mate. So I had a boat. In fact, the first real adventurous thing I did was I built this boat called Earth Race. We fueled it on biodiesel made from waste cooking oils. And we set a record for a powerboat to circle the globe.
Now your first attempt failed.
Failed miserably.
I would like to know a little bit more about how that went down.
In hindsight, the two challenges were very similar, but in the end, we arrived in Panama and had propeller problems. We blew up an engine. We got stuck in Palau for a long time. We hit a log offshore. Got caught in a monsoon crossing the Indian Ocean, and that was very tough.
Was that first boat similar to the second boat? Because the second boat looked like Buck Rogers in the 21st century. I mean, it was a crazy angular
it was the
spaceship.
Same boat. We just painted it black, mate. You're easily fooled, obviously.
Yeah.
So it was silver when we did the round the world thing, and so the first attempt was the same boat, but then we had major mechanical problems and failed miserably. Then we refitted it. The sponsors all came back and said, look, why don't you give it another crack? Came back next year. And I had a similar amount of problems second time round, but I think my job at handling them was much better second time round. My crew, similar in terms of capability. And second times round, we deserved it. We hit a log offshore from Palau. And we had a bent drive shaft, 6 metre gouge down the side of the boat, smashed engine mounts, gearbox stuffed, whole range of stuff. And we limped to Singapore on one motor. And we pulled it out of the water. We talked to, there was a salvage yard there, and we talked them into lending us their crane, and we had our boat, and they said, how big's your boat? I was like, about 15 metres. It was 24. And we had the bow sticking out over the water, and my crew did an amazing job getting that boat repaired. It wasn't pretty. I remember I did this composite job. It is the roughest piece of composite you've ever seen, but it was
because
functional.
It's carbon, right?
Yeah, carbon. So I had to rebuild a P bracket. I don't know if you like where the drive shaft comes out the back, and you've got a P bracket supporting it, and that was all smashed up. And so I made this new P bracket inside 2 days, and that was the turning point. After that, the team deserved to get the record, and it still stands today. There's been a couple of attempts on it, but it's hard to get a boat around the globe, mate. It's hard to get a boat from here out to that island and back, let alone around the world.
How do you get the fuel? We were talking about this the other day. Are you guys just eating French fries constantly and then pouring it in?
I'll tell you something. One of the great things with biodiesel, you can make it from almost any vegetable oil, from fish oil, from animal fat. I did a little thing once when I first started this. I went and underwent liposuction. And they got about 50 mil out of sort of what I call the back straps. They got like almost nothing, and it ended up looked like butter chicken. And then it condensed out, and it was like a little bit of blood, a little bit of meat, and a little bit of fat on top. And then so obviously it wasn't enough to make biodiesel. The surgeon agreed. He had 2 other quite fat people, and he got 5 kilos out of each of them. So I ended up with 10 kilos of human fat.
Fantastic.
And I brewed up biodiesel in my kitchen at home. My missus, she comes home, she wasn't over. She said, what are you up to? I was like, you don't want to know, really. So anyway, I made 10 litres of biodiesel. But the story got a bit out of control, and one of the New Zealand newspapers got onto it, and then it ended up becoming, here's this crackpot in New Zealand offering free liposuction. I had 400 emails from people thinking I was offering free liposuction to fuel my boat, so that didn't help me that much. And it was a lesson for me about media. Like, for a period of time, I was this crackpot who was offering free liposuction, sort of thing. And it was good in the sense that it raised awareness about biodiesel, and you can make it from lots of things. But then you don't want to be portrayed as a nutcase.
Yeah. Well,
so anyway, when we got the fuel, so we had a company, SGC Energia, which was a Spanish company. They sponsored the fuel, and they had arranged it. In places like America, it's easy. So America and Hawaii, which are refuel point, Europe, they had covered. But there was a couple of remote places like Palau. We had to ship it there in a container.
Yeah.
And Salalah in Oman, it's the oil capital of the world in some ways. And we had to, what do you got here? It's sort of fuel. Don't worry, but don't ask questions. Combustible. So we had 12 refuel stops around the globe. And it remains, that started my journey into conservation. Like up before that, I'd worked in the oil industry. Talk about turning over the dark side. I'm in the oil industry, and then I go and start promoting biofuels. But in some ways, the oil industry for me was just making money. Like I was, highly paid on the oil rigs. And
right. You've got an engineering degree. You've got a degree in business, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I did a Bachelor of Science in Maths and Physics, and then I did a Bachelor of Engineering and Mechanical, and that was super helpful. The Maths and Physics, not really so helpful. Unless you want to teach it or you want to do something super clever. And I'm not super
Maybe
smart.
for that P drive, no.
Yeah, sort
so
of
much.
thing. Yeah. And so then I did the engineering, which has been super helpful to me in my career.
Yeah.
And then quite a few years later, I was running a smaller high-tech business. I needed a business background, so I did an MBA. And the MBA was a doddle. Compared to engineering and science, they are tough. They are hard exams to pass. But MBA, just remember stuff and write it down, and easy money.
Hey, let's skip back a little bit. I want to come back to talking about how the patrols go, how you keep this boat going, and keep the nonprofit funded and keep going. But there's some great stories around the Arctic whaling stuff. And
right. We started on that, didn't I? So we built this boat to set a record to go around the globe. Fueled it on biodiesel from waste cooking oils, and set a record to go around the globe. After that, I was becoming disillusioned with biofuels because the industry was switching to palm oil as the main feedstock, and a lot of that is on ex-rainforest land and stuff. At the same time, my crew watched a show called Whale Wars, and one of the crew's like, man, you should go on this. The boat's got nothing to do after we finish all our sponsor stuff. And I was in Sydney, and a journalist came down and asked me the question, what are you going to do now? And just off the cuff, I said, I might go down to Antarctica and hassle those Japanese whales. And in Australia and New Zealand, the whaling is a big issue. Like, we think of it as in our backyard, even though it's not our territorial waters. It is, the boats come sneaking past us and go hunting directly south of us. So it's a big issue for us. And so the journalist got hold of Sea Shepherd, and then next thing I get a call from Paul Watson, and we agree to meet in Friday Harbour and put a deal together where a guy by the name of Addy Gill, he would buy the boat off me, and then I'd captain the boat to Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And it remains one of the most extraordinary adventures of my life. Like, it wasn't easy. Antarctica's hard, and we were chasing these Japanese boats around and trying naughty stuff. Like, we were prop fouling them. We prop fouled
like chucking lines in the water.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
But like we were an engineer at play here. We made these. We got steel cables, wove them together, and then calculated the mass of those, and then got buoys so that it was supported in a great big U thing. For you to prop foul big boats is hard. Small boats easy. You just put a line across the water, but big boats is tough. And so we got this, and we prop fouled the Nishin Murray. This is like a $8,000 or $10,000 ton ship. Had it dead in the water. So we were doing all sorts of naughty stuff. But then it was on 6th of January 2010. we'd basically run out of fuel. We had 200 litres of fuel left, and we were going to have to wait a couple of days to be refueled by one of the other boats down there. And the security ship, who we'd already had plenty of run-ins with, they came sliding by us in the last minute. They turned to starboard and ran us over. And it became...
You guys were up on deck, cracking a beer and like every day, right?
Wouldn't say we were cracking a beer, but our work was done. Like we'd prop fouled the big boat. And
I'll remind you, you're really sipping that thing. As a New Zealander, you should be ashamed.
That's right. I don't mind being considered a slow beer drinker.
Well, in the tropics, they go warm, and a warm Pilsen is a crime. Terrible.
It's not a bad drop, that though.
It's not great. It's not great.
That's all right. Where was I?
You were talking about being up on deck when you were rammed by the security boat.
Yeah. So we were kind of our work was done. We were going to be waiting 2 days for the Rangers for the fucking Rangers. Get a grip, Bethune. That's what happens. You go putting beer and me going on a cheap day.
I confuse people. So you're up there sunbathing in Antarctica, and along comes the security boat, wipes out the first third of your boat.
And the security boat is an engineering marvel. Like those whaling boats, they are made 25 knots. They can turn on a dime, super fast turning. And you see them when they turn, they lean over. And there's a famous video of our boat being run over. It's appeared on all the boatcrashes.com sort of thing. It's on there. But
I don't watch those. As a guy who owns a sailing center, I can't watch that shit.
So anyway, the boat got run over, and then we got rescued we had the Bob Barker, another boat came and rescued us, and then
named after the game show host.
He put $5 million in to buy the boat.
Oh man, another reason to love Bob Barker.
Yeah, he's done a lot for conservation, animal rights and stuff. So they came rescued us. The boat was badly damaged. After that, I got ordered by Paul Watson to scuttle the boat. The plan was we were to take it to France, to the French base in Antarctica, and there was a boat there that could carry it back, but Watson had sort of other ideas, and I foolishly went along with his plans. And it remains like in the last, say, 15 years, I've done a lot of cool stuff that I'm super proud of. The one regret I have was ever going along with that. Like, it was dishonest what we did. We were pretending to tow the boat, and yet we scuttled it.
Well, I think we're glossing over, because you and I had this story the other day. But you were up on top. End of the day, the security boat comes along, knocks out like almost a third of the bow of your boat.
20 foot of the boat.
But you could have limped it home if you'd been refueled. But you decided that the what do you say, that the visuals for the conservation movement were better if you said that you were sunk by that whaling boat.
Yep.
That was a decision from Sea Shepherd, and you went along with that, and regretted that at the end.
Yep. So anyway, then I've got no boat because the boat's been abandoned in Antarctica. And then I had this idea to board the boat that ran me over, board them and hand them an invoice for $3 million to replace the boat. But the plan here was to go back to Japan as a prisoner. Like, to put it in perspective, the ramming of the Addie Gill was the #1 news story in all Western countries for 2 days. Never made television in Japan. It was page 4, page 5 of the Japan Times. Like, it was a non-issue. And so I'd sort of spent some time with Sea Shepherd management talking about how do we get the story in Japan, because in the end it needed the Japanese government to stop the funding of the whaling, heavily subsidised. Something like $30 million a year was going into subsidise it in those days. So I suggested, I've got no boat, why don't I board the Shonan Maru and cheekily give them an invoice, and they'll take me back to Japan as a prisoner. So that was all I did, but the boat was hard to board.
So that's a big boat. We're talking, you're talking
70 meters.
You hatched this plan without a bunch of beers, that you're going to board this massive Chinese whaling boat in the middle of the night in the Arctic seas on a jet ski.
What could possibly go wrong?
I got that right?
Yeah. It was a tough day at the office, and Larry and I spent. In fact, I tried it in the day a few times, but they've got anti-boarding spikes, these big steel spikes, and those big ships, they roll. There's 2 meters between each spike. Our jet ski was 3.5 meters. So how are we going to fit in there? They've got nets up the side to stop you boarding. They've got guys with impulse guns.
I can't believe
shoots like pepper spray.
I can't believe do they have those deployed all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Well, in Antarctica, when they're getting hassled by us.
Ah, okay.
You know, so I think back in Japan they take the spikes off, but there was one spike missing, and so Larry's my engineer, we hatched this plan. Eventually, we figured the only way to do it is at night and we got to try and slip in without being spotted. So that was what we did, and then we had an Animal Planet cameraman off on the back. And afterwards, he confessed he never filmed a single thing. He thought his day was up. This is a guy who'd done 7 years filming Deadliest Catch. He said he's never shit his pants so much in his life. So Larry, we were in the jet ski. We nearly tip it over a few times. 3 people on those little wee jet skis is quite hard.
What's the temperature of the water?
About 0 to 1. It gets to minus 1.5 down there because salt water, it freezes a little bit lower. But I think it was about 0 to 1 on those. So cold, free, like you fall in.
Yeah.
So anyway, first attempt, pulled alongside and we smacked the side of this. I was showing Amari like quite hard, and I was worried our jet ski, like something cracked on the jet ski. So now you're worried you got a big hole in the side. But anyway, I climbed up on the side, and then I was sort of clinging on the side, and there was a net that was preventing me from just going in. So I'm clinging on the side, and the boat rolled back, and then as it rolled, this wave came up sort of to about my waist height and swept me off. And then suddenly it all goes quiet and my head pops up above the water. Oh, it's quite cold. I'm looking for Larry. And Larry, my engineer, you're doing stuff like this, you want to have a good operator on the other end. Anyway, he doesn't hear me on the radio. He doesn't know that I've fallen in, but he doesn't hear me on the radio. And so he's sort of sitting there thinking, either Pete got in and his radio's busted, or he's fallen in the water. If he got in, mission accomplished. If he's in the water, I better go and rescue him. So he just followed the trail back, and next thing, and it was big swell. It's like it's kind of 3 meter swell. And next thing, suddenly there's this jet ski just above me. Like, hey, Larry, here I am. So back on, made a second attempt, and second time got on. Like this, when the boat rolled, didn't come quite as low. Maybe water just above my knees, and then as the boat rolled over the second time, out with knife, cut it, got on the boat, and I knew I'd made.
So you cut the boarding, the nets,
cut the net,
and squeeze a board in the middle of the night.
Mate, I knew I'd made history, I knew I'd made a little bit of history, and in some ways, up until then, I've got some control of my destiny. After that, it's all in the hands of others, up to lawyers and whatever. So eventually they took me back to Japan and
wait. So there's a little bit more to it. You in your pocket, you boarded the boat with an invoice for $3 million for the damages to your boat.
I had on the boat until daybreak. And so at daybreak, and I was in radio comms back with the Steve Irwin. So they agreed to send the chopper out. So in case the Japanese, I didn't know if they'd throw me off the boat or what they'd do. And you're a captain of a boat, and someone cheekily boards it. You're going to be pretty pissed off. Yeah. So anyway, at daybreak, the chopper was overhead filming, and I wander up to the bridge, and I knock on the door, and then you see suddenly there's people all scuffling around, and eventually the captain comes out, and he opens up the door, and he thinks I've jumped off the chopper. He does, and then he's looking, see, is there a boat? He doesn't realise I've been on his boat for the last 3 or 4 hours, sort of thing. And then he closes the door and locks the door. And I've already been around most of his ship outside, and there's plenty of doors open. I was like, come on. Eventually, so he opens the door, he has another look outside, and he goes back inside, and he goes to close the door, and I just slid in behind him, and it was like, you turn up at a party and you're not invited, It was like, and there's all these people, and no one knew what to do. They were just standing there. And so I went and sat up. They had a bit of a ledge on the front. I just went up and sat up there, and by now Sea Shepherd was radioing saying what my demand was. So my demand was they give me $3 million to replace the boat that they ran over. But it was always, the goal was to go back to Japan, and 30 days later we arrived back in Japan.
So they put you on, in basically the brig on board the boat. They motor back. It's a couple weeks to get back, something like that?
4 weeks.
Oh.
4 weeks, long way.
And then they get back and they're like, well, we're taking you to prison in Japan.
Pretty much, yeah. And, they put me in a Coast Guard prison first, and that was a holiday camp. Like so they come up and they say, what do you want to eat? And I said, well, what's my options? And they said, well, there's lots of restaurants around here. We could, and so they brought up a whole lot of menus. And I was at the Coast Guard prison could probably hold 40 or 50 people. I was the only one, and I've got 5 guards. So I said, let's order a whole lot. So I said, one of those. So then for the next 3 nights, I just have these 5 guards sitting there having dinner with me, and it was nice, like it was from Flash restaurants.
Yeah.
And then after that, they transferred me to the high security remand prison in Japan.
To a real prison.
And that was shit there. It was horrible. Yeah, I hated it. The food was shit. I saw lots of nasty stuff, and there's evil, horrible people in there.
Like
and
Yakuza and really bad people.
Yeah. There was that ward. It's the highest security ward. It got 100 inmates, 50 each side. There was the mastermind of the sarin gas poisoning in the Tokyo subway. He was there. His court case at that stage had been going for 20 years. His court case was still ongoing. The judicial system in Japan very different to Western judicial systems. There was a guy who had raped and murdered like 12 prostitutes or something. There was another guy who killed 4 people in a samurai sword thing.
And you guys played basketball or whatever?
You were allowed, so Monday and Thursday was shower day and shave day. And so shower day, you go in the showers, and there's up to 12 people there. 4 people in this bath sing, 4 people naked, and then 4 getting changed sort of into clothes or out of clothes sort of thing. So there's up to 12 inmates in there at one stage. And I go, this is my first time. So I'm sort of standing there looking around.
Right.
Next thing,
you're the only.
Only gringo.
Yeah.
There was two mainland Chinese. There was one guy from Ghana and myself. All the rest were Japanese, and probably a third of them were Yakuza, based on tattoos and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know if you want this on here, but this guy starts playing with this guy starts playing with his cock. And like big sumo guy, massive guy, and sort of, you don't see that every day. I think it's normal in prison or something. And so I sort of back, and you could see everyone was on edge, and so I sort of back away, and everyone's just looking at this, and then the 4 kids there's 4 people in the bath. They get told to get out. Next thing, this big guy jumps on this what was an 18-year-old kid, jumps on him, smacked him over the head a few times, and start fucking him.
Okay.
And
I thought it was going to be a little more family friendly.
So anyway, I'll finish the story, and you can leave it out.
Oh no, we don't cut anything. I should have told you.
So the guards, one of them presses a buzzer. They stand back with tasers ready to go.
Yeah.
They don't touch the guy busy raping this 18-year-old kid.
Sure.
And then they press the buzzer, touch all of the locks in the whole ward go in lockdown. And then about maybe 90 seconds later, I hear this chung, 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 chung. And 25 guys come charging into the thing, all dressed in black. 2 guys filming, guys with tasers, guys with all sorts of equipment.
Filming.
And they come in and they
get in closer.
Yeah, and they pull these 2 guys apart and take them off. And that was like my 4th day in Japan or something.
And you were like the next guy in the shower. Oh. They're like, okay, next, come on, you.
Let me tell you, up until this
white
point,
man with the nice culo, get in there.
Up until this point, it seemed like a holiday campaign, and it became quite a horrible place after that. And one of the things at Japanese prison,
it's not funny. I mean, it's an awkward laugh. Yeah, it's an awkward laugh.
It was I came out a different person, Like it did screw me up a bit. And
so when we first talked about this, before you told me, I was thinking, he's in this prison for a couple of weeks, and then the lawyers get out. You were in there for 5 months.
5 months. Yeah, it was tough. And the last month especially was very dark for me. And towards the end, so I thought they would deport me under immigration laws. They fabricated an assault charge. Like they charged me with 5 things: possession of a knife, boarding a boat without permission, disruption of business, and one other thing, destruction of property because I cut the net to get on board. So those 4 charges, I don't mind. Like that, that was what I did. But they fabricated an assault charge, and I got convicted of it. And assault in Japan is a very serious crime. So at about the 4-month mark, on the last main day of the court case, my lawyers came to me and they said, "You're going to get between 2 and 5 years." And by this stage, I've already done 4 months in prison. My boat got run over by these wankers. They're whaling illegally in Antarctica, and yet I'm the one in Britain. Like, it should be the captain of the Shonen Maru who's standing in this courtroom. And one of the things in Japanese court, if you stand up and argue your case like that, they throw the book at you. I would get 5 years at least if I stood there and said, you guys shouldn't be whaling in Antarctica, blah blah blah. So you've got to stand there and show contrition and remorse for this assault charge that has been fabricated.
Right.
That is not an easy thing to do.
No.
So my lawyer said to me, "You're going to get between 2 and 5 years," and that's why that last month became very miserable for me, thinking like the unfairness of this process, that I'm the one in the dock and the one who's going to end up having to do, at a minimum they're saying 2 years. And then when the final verdict came in, so it was 2 years prison but suspended for 5 years. So it meant as long as I behaved myself, I don't have to go back to prison. The turning point in the case, afterwards the lawyers came and saw me again. They said the turning point was I learnt about 10 minutes of Japanese, so basically a speech that I wrote, and then my lawyers converted it to Japanese.
Perfected it with your Yakuza friends.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're not allowed to speak in prison, so that's a hard thing. So max security there, you're not allowed to speak. So you can sort of whisper to yourself, but no way can you go and chat to. Well, you're never exposed to other inmates to talk anyway. And if you try and talk, they clamp down on you. And so anyway, so I wrote the speech, but they converted it to Japanese, and they made it much more apologetic and saying I never intended to hurt anyone or whatever. And after it was all wrapped up, they said the turning point in the case was that speech. And afterwards, the newspapers ran the story. You know, Pete Bethune, you've got to admire this guy's fluent in Japanese after being in prison for, you know, 5 months in prison, and he's now fluent in Japanese. Well, I wasn't fluent, mate. I was fluent for 10 minutes, so don't ask me anything else.
I can still give that one speech.
Yeah. I can still remember some bits of it. One is Bakuhatsu ikari o uchikomareshi chi o nagashi nagara shindakimasu.
Does that mean get this sumo wrestler off my ass?
No, I wish I'd known that one. To be fair, in the end, I can't complain. Like, prison was a very difficult place, but no one messed with me in prison. Prison, in Japanese prison, there's 3 kinds of people I found in the end. There was broken men. A lot of them are broken men. Like, if I'd have ended up doing 5 years, I'm sure I'd have come out very broken. And then there's the angry men. You know, you're in prison unfairly or whatever your story is, but their system is quite rigged. And then the third one, there was maybe 3 or 4 in my ward in totality who were very chill, you know, sort of just accepting, hey, you know, I'm in prison and that's okay, and quite sort of zen. Those are the 3 types of inmates that are in there, but the bulk of them, angry men or broken men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happy to get out of there.
I bet they are.
That's right.
And so now tables have turned, and now you are the guy putting guys in the slammer in a way. You're patrolling. You were down in the Galapagos recently, looking at those same Chinese guys coming in and squid fishing.
Yeah. So what I did was after my stint in Japan, went back to New Zealand. Chilled out for a bit, and there's that challenge once you start to work on stuff you really believe in. It's very hard to go back and do 9 to 5, selling cars or fixing washing machines or something. But there's a challenge how you fund that thing, and so I hired a bunch of former Spec Ops guys, some Navy SEALs and stuff, and we helped some countries on anti-poaching and stuff.
Is that how you guys developed the uniform that you wear here?
These guys, Cryptech, they just called us up and said, hey, look, we like what you guys do. Do you need some gear?
Yeah,
I said,
cool.
I do. Here's my address. So we had a whole lot of these arriving in Costa Rica.
All right.
Yeah. So we filmed a television show, but you can only tell the story of you know, catching an illegal fisherman so many times, and the show kind of ran its course. And the other thing I didn't like about the show was there's a demonisation of local people. You know, so it's all very well you going out catching some little guy catching a few fish illegally, but is he public enemy number one? Probably not. If he's in a marine reserve, I don't agree with it. But the show wanted demonisation of local people, and so in the end, I was sort of happy to flag away the show. And since then, increasingly, I've tried to work with governments in terms of supporting them and managing their national parks. And so we have, you know, the ship. Oh, we've got that $4 million drone upstairs too. You get a shot of that before you go. So
Tommy was salivating over that thing.
Yeah, you can fly that a couple of 100 kilometres away. And Sheba have donated that to us. Yeah. So that's a $4 million drone. They provide me pilots when I need them. They provide service technicians and spare parts and stuff. And so that's going to be super useful for us when we start doing the patrols in CMAR, which is sort of where we're here. CMAR is the Eastern Tropical Pacific Zone, the extension of the Cocos Island Marine Reserve. And that, in conservation circles, that CMAR thing is a big deal. The fact that you've got Ecuador with Galapagos,
CMAR is the inter-country agreement to protect some of the areas.
It's basically linking Malpelo Island, Cocos Island, Galapagos Islands, and Coimbra Island and Panama, linking those 4 together with beltways linking the whole 4 of them together. And they know a lot of those pelagic species, they do move around between those 4, and it doesn't link them exactly, but it's a massive. When you put the whole area together, it's enormous. But that raises a challenge. It's all very well creating this national park. How are you going to protect it? And so that's where we're offering support to the Panama government and also the Costa Rican government. So we've got the ship. We can do 30 days at sea. I've got a drone that I can fly a couple of 100 kilometres away to do surveillance. And so we partner with, in this case, it's SENAC. Their rangers come on board, or in some cases, it may be Coast Guard guys who come on board. SENAC have jurisdiction in national parks. Coast Guard have jurisdiction in the rest of the waters. So, and there's no doubt, SEMA, those areas do have foreign boats from time to time coming in and fishing illegally.
Right. Where are those boats from? Are they from neighbouring countries? Are they?
It's a mix. For example, here in the north, the bulk of the legal fishing is Nicaraguan boats. In the south, Venezuelan and Panamanian boats, and it gets complicated. There's some of them have a license, some don't. On out past Cocos, Chinese boats more often than not. So it's a mix, and then in the middle of Costa Rica, it tends to be more local boats that might sneak in a reserve at night and have a crack.
What's it going to take to protect Costa Rica and keep it the way that, Costa Rica has great laws about so many things, but the enforcement falls short all the time. And I feel like that's probably the same for a lot of these beautiful Central American countries. They have a beautiful, beautiful natural area. They want to protect it. What's it going to take from your perspective?
It's hard, man. Like, Costa Rica, there's lots of pressure on this government. Education and healthcare, and it's an aging population that creates certain strains. You've got so many things drawing that money. You've got narco traffic coming up and down here. That draws a lot of resource to try and address that. And so one of the ways forward is partnerships with the government and foundations, non-profits, individuals. A great example was the trawling in Gulf of Dulce. A guy, Paul Tudor Jones, came in and he bought out the bottom trawling fleet.
This is an American.
He's
billionaire?
American. I think he was a hedge fund guy. He lived in Greenwich, up north of New York. There, he funded the thing in its entirety, and it took like I think 3 or 4 years for them to negotiate. But Gulf of Dulce has become one of the world's greatest waterways, and yet if they still had those shrimpers in there, there's no way. Like I first visited there in might have been 2011. Yeah, and it was shit. Like it's way better now. It's way better. And part of it was that Paul Tudor Jones bought out all of the shrimpers.
Those shrimpers are very destructive.
Yeah, bottom trawling. I think it should be banned full stop. Shrimp trawlers are enormously. But the interesting thing, the shrimpers weren't really targeting shrimp. They were targeting snapper. The shrimp license gave them the right to bottom trawl. In fact, we caught a guy in one of the resorts up here. This was back 2013, quite a while ago. It was a resort, Caramanal or something. So it's on this peninsula halfway down, and there's a marine protected area here, and there's another one here, like in a triangle. And we caught this guy who was the president of the Commercial Fishermen's Association, and we had infrared spotlights and night vision, and we followed him 7 hours, basically like a lawnmower inside the marine reserve. And he was a shrimper. He had almost zero shrimp. It was all full of snapper and a few sharks, and it was a great mix of fish in there, but almost zero shrimps. But the shrimping gave him the license to operate. So what I'm getting at, Paul Tudor Jones bought out all these shrimpers, and it has turned the Gulf of Dulce into being an amazing waterway. And now there's no commercial fishing allowed in there. And the money it brings in terms of tourism, you go there, you're going to see dolphins. The other day we saw false killer whales in there. There's turtles, there's whales, there's tons of needlefish. A lot of our patrols in there's been on the needlefish thing. There's mahi-mahi, there's yellowfin tuna. There's so much wildlife inside that Gulf of Dulce. But one of the keys was a private guy stepped up and put his money in. And the point I'm getting at is in conservation, in many ways, many people around the globe would look at Costa Rica and think, man, I can help those guys out. Like the government is struggling to go addressing all these. Like the government has so many things to spend money on, and conservation sometimes is too far down the food chain. Even though Costa Rica knows it's valuable, you're talking about feeding hungry people and putting kids through school and building a new hospital and then there's conservation.
Right.
I understand
And then
why
there's
it's
the
further
turtles.
down the food
Sure.
chain. And so I believe in the future, one of the things it's going to take is increased partnerships and shared interests. You know, look, my crew on here, we're all conservationists, and we look at Costa Rica maybe not as a model example of what's possible, but as a country that's worthy of our support. I don't get paid to
Who
be
is
here.
the model example? Like, what countries are actually really leading the way?
If you were to say management of fisheries, probably New Zealand. New Zealand was the first to introduce the quota management system, where every year the quotas go up and down based on scientific data. We have almost zero illegal fishing. If you get caught with any infraction on fishing, your boat is confiscated. Like, it's like no questions, your boat is confiscated. Undersized snapper, boat is gone. Trailer's gone. The car that towed the trailer, that towed the boat, is gone. And so New Zealand has really clamped down on illegal fishing.
This is even for the weekend fishermen, for
Yeah,
everybody.
In New Zealand, the commercial guys, they can be a bit naughty at time, but they've got observers on the boat. All the big commercial boats all have an independent observer. And if they see something wrong, it gets reported and they do get in trouble. The smaller commercial boats don't have independent observers, but they have cameras 24/7. You know, and there's people who can look at that and say, oh, they've got, all of the boats have AIS, so the authority can see where these boats are fishing, and if suddenly they've stopped in a marine reserve. And occasionally a boat does get caught, and if they get caught, they will be fined. There was one just recently, I think they end up with a fine of like $1.5 million. Like, you're CEO of a fishing company, that shows up at the end of the year and you've got to stand up in front of your board and say, well, you know, we got caught fishing illegally, and it's not a good look. So New Zealand is an example, but in some ways it's simpler for New Zealand because we're our own country. We don't have other countries near us. So we don't have if foreign boats want to fish in New Zealand, they'd come a long way.
Right.
Here, you know, 30 or 40 miles this way, we've got Nicaragua.
Yeah.
Down south, 30 or 40 miles from Golfito, you've got Panama. And so it's easy for foreign boats to sneak in and fish illegally. And so anyway, back to your question, I think the way forward, part of it is legislation, and Costa Rican government is reasonably good on legislation protecting parks. Part of it is enforcement, and organisations like ours have a role to support the rangers or the Coast Guard in doing that protection.
And this boat is a gas guzzler.
Drinks a lot of fuel, mate. I tell you,
This
mate,
thing is a massive, heavy boat.
800 ton pushing that through the
but
water.
nobody's going to push you around in a boat like this. You know, those fishermen, medium-sized fishermen. You know, best of luck. This boat made it through World War II.
This boat really is a mothership.
Yeah.
So the boats, when we find boats that might be fishing illegally, we put the Zodiac in the water, or we put the Rib in the water and chase them down. So it just acts as a mothership, and it's the flight deck for the drone. In some ways, the way you find illegal fishing boats is changing. Historically, it was you just send a boat out and drive aimlessly around the sea, or maybe you do a grid pattern. You stumble over a boat, then you go and board it. These days, so we have a lot of satellite data. We have a good relationship with the US Coast Guard. They give us intel. For example, there was a Chinese boat recently that they detected coming into Costa Rican waters. And in future, they basically said, look, we will give you a heads up when there's something there. So all we got to do, if we get a heads up from the US Coast Guard, hey, there's a Chinese boat at such and such, then we can call up Coast Guard, and we've got a good relationship with Coast Guard, especially in Golfito. They put put 2 or 4 Coast Guard guys on it, and we go out and have a go at them. And so the Americans using satellite, there's the Global Fishing Watch website, which is a massive database and near real time of AOS data. There's the VIA's NOAA satellites that were put up originally to find clouds. Now those have become great for detecting lights at night. And there's the thing we call the dark fleet. So Global Fishing Watch is great on AIS data, which is the signal commercial ships send out.
Right.
Let's say it shows up on Global Fishing Watch on the AIS, but it does it. So it shows up there, and it shows up on the VIA's, probably a legal boat. Look up the name; it's legal. But if it shows up on a satellite, but not on Global Fishing Watch, the AIS is off. You know, so then that becomes what we call the dark fleet. That's an interesting boat for us.
Like the dark web.
Like the dark web, yeah, kind of thing. I don't want to drive my boat 300 miles to go and have a look at this boat. But what I might do is I might fly my drone a couple hundred kilometres, take a look at him.
Right.
Is he illegal or not? And if it's illegal, then we can use the drone to gather evidence to show that, hey, he is fishing illegally. Then if it's a local boat, we don't need to do anything more. We pass it over to SINAC and they can prosecute or decide what they want to do. And if it's a foreign boat, then you can make a decision. It's worth our while to burn the fuel to go out there and chase this boat and bring them back in.
You have four things that you need to click off for prosecution from these guys. And I know that some of the work that you do, like we've been talking about, you don't want to demonize the local population, people that are fishing in order to feed their families. But if it's not that kind of situation, you need to make sure that you verify that they're fishing in this area.
Actually, I'll touch on that. When we first started doing patrols in Gulf of Dulce, one of the early nights, we caught 19 boats fishing illegally. And none of them were prosecuted, there was no gear confiscated, anything. And I was a little bit upset at the time. And then next time we did a patrol, I think it was 12, and then next time 5. Last 2 patrols, 0. We didn't need to arrest anyone. The people in there, they know if patrols are happening, you're going to be caught, sort of thing. And for the most part, they've become very law-abiding in that area. And so, but one of the challenges in conservation is there's increasingly this demonisation of local people. And especially on Instagram and Facebook, people, why don't you sink their boat? Why don't you put them in prison? Whatever.
Right.
That's not our goal. Our goal is to protect the marine areas. And if people are respecting those marine protected areas, then that's great. And if they are fishing illegally, I would rather they were coerced into not doing it. And I've caught enough illegal fishermen, mate. Often they're poor people feeding their family. I don't agree fishing in a marine reserve. Yeah. But there's mitigating circumstance. And so now I barely touch on social media. Like I have no ambition to go putting up some poor fisherman who we catch or whatever. So the local people, my team, I drill into them. Like, these are local people and we are lucky to come here and work and help SINAC and the government. Yeah. And there's a lot of support from, tourism increasing importance here, game fishermen who pay big money to come and take these boats out. There's reasons why this area deserves good protection. Foreign boats is a different matter, and hopefully over the next couple of years we can start to make a bigger dent in terms of catching foreign boats, because that effectively is stealing. Yeah. And an example here is there's no doubt there's a fair few boats from Nicaragua that come from the north, and in the south tends to be bigger boats. They have purse seiners that will come in, fish illegally in there occasionally. And then, occasionally you've got Chinese boats sneaking, down. There's a corridor between Ecuador and Costa Rican territorial waters. There's like this 20 nautical mile zone. The boats come down and they go slipping inside Costa Rica or slipping inside Ecuadorian waters.
So, I know you have contracts with the government, with Costa Rica, with Panama, but you were also accepting and need donations from private citizens to keep this project funded and moving. How do people help? How can they help monetarily? And do you have opportunities? If people wanted to say, hey, I can give you a couple months of my time.
So there's a number of ways people can help. I should point out our contracts with the government is $0. So the Costa Rican government doesn't pay us anything. We do this for free, but we get funding from other sources. Okay. One of the best things we have is local support. So in Golfito, we've got Crocodile Bay Marina support us. We've got the Banana Bay Marina support us. There's some big hitters down there. If I need a few bucks to buy some diesel or something, I call up and say, hey, can you give us a hand? A lot of the people down there will volunteer on the boat at times. Here,
you
for example,
take volunteers on board.
Yeah. And my crew on here, all volunteers. Most of them pay to be on here, but local people, we're always keen to take local people on the board, so they come and crew on the boat for free and help us out. I just met this morning with the owners of Lazy Lizard, who run they've got a charter boat thing where you can go
Jason
out
and Lynette.
There you go.
Good
so
people.
In fact, I don't know if you can't see it in the shot here, but my rib sitting there, rigid inflatable boat, I smashed up the stern drive doing a patrol in Vienna a couple of weeks ago. I don't have my main patrol vessel, so they're donating a punga for the weekend. I haven't told the SINAC Rangers we're popping out in a punga. In fact, we were just in at their place fixing the outboard boat this morning.
Lazy Lizard is famous for their guaro punch. You should see if they're going to throw some of that in as well.
Yeah, right. So anyway, we got patrols up on the border with Nicaragua this weekend, which will be cool. And my rib won't be gone, but hopefully they'll loan me the punga, and it comes unscathed in one piece. My record's not that great. Once you've had a boat run over in Antarctica, it does.
Yeah.
You can't say what could possibly go wrong.
Right.
Actually, quite a lot. So
Follows
anyway,
you.
so we rely a lot on support from local people. The marina here, we were in Los Sueños, so it was very challenging. They wouldn't let us in the marina. Here we've got rangers coming on board. We've got a whole lot of equipment. We're taking to the rangers station in Santa Rosa. And so the marina's supporting us. They let us go in and out of there. And so we become very dependent in the areas on local support. And, here there's a few people who said they'll probably help us out financially with, diesel. For me to bring my ship up here and go and do a patrol around Santa Rosa, it's a lot of fuel, mate. And so often we will get a local community who will all chip in and say, hey, look, the guys are coming back 3 times a year. Can we raise a bit of money to help them out with fuel and food and stuff? And keep in mind, like we feed the rangers, we provide all the fuel, we provide and the patrols wouldn't happen if we weren't here.
Yeah, and you need those rangers on board to provide the sort of law enforcement
legitimacy of operation. Like if we don't have, I'm not a vigilante.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't make any decisions in terms of arrests or anything.
You seem like a very reasonable guy to me, Pete.
I like to think so. I like to think so. I'll tell you a couple of stories. So, about 2 months ago, we got a call from, and it ended up, I think it was the Vice Minister of Environment. He said, "Oh, could your boat go to Cocos Island?" I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" They want us to go up and pick up 3 guys off Cocos Island. And so the Coast Guard here doesn't have any vessels capable of going that far.
That's
300 miles. 350 nautical miles from Peturo Bay here. And at the time, I did have enough fuel to go. So I said, yeah, I can go out there. And they said, oh, we've got 3 drug runners that we want you to go and pick up. Really? So I'll tell you what happened. So the US Coast Guard, there's 2 boats that sort of work up and down here addressing narco traffic.
Cutters.
Coast Guard cutters, yeah, that's them. There's 2 of them, and often you'll see them refueling in Golfito. They were following these drug runners, and they saw them transfer some drugs from one boat to the next, transferred to a Tico boat. And then the Tico boat, the captain.
Which one? Sorry, that's not important. Go ahead.
So the Tico, the captain of the Tico boat, he sees this helicopter, and he thinks he's about to be busted. He torches his boat, so the boat sinks to the gunwale. So all the drugs
taken. Where are these
with
boats?
This boat is, I think, maybe 100 nautical miles from Cocos Island, so well offshore. And torches his boat, sinks to the gunwale. 3 men in the water. A passing tourist boat go on their way to Tahiti, pick them up, drop them off on Cocos Island. So
like
now
cruisers, like on their.
This is just a little yacht, mate. Just a little yacht with a French couple.
I think I've seen
go to Tahiti.
I've seen this movie with Nicole Kidman, and then the guy gets saw that one.
No, thankfully it didn't end up like that. Well, they'd end up happily ever after, I think. But anyway, so we went out to Cocos Island to pick up these three homies. I should call them castaways, not drug runners, because that was the official word, was that we're calling them castaways. So we turn up on the island. The rangers are done. So there's 5 rangers on there, normally dealing with tourism, maintenance, cooking, cleaning.
That is a great gig.
Suddenly you've got 24-hour surveillance of 3 probably dangerous men.
I mean, talk real quickly about Islas del Coco.
It is unbelievable. It's one of the coolest. Probably, I would say, if you were to say to me, "You got 1 day left on Earth, where do you want to go?" I'd go to Cocos.
Wow.
It is the coolest place on Earth. And the extraordinary thing is, everywhere you look is a postcard. It is so beautiful, and above and under the water. Like under the water, it's extraordinary. So we turn up there. We get these 3 homies. I end up doing a body search of them, put them on the boat. Castaways, sorry. We've got the 3 castaways, put them on the boat. So Golfito Coast Guard gave me 2 Coast Guard people to do security on this voyage. So I put them on the ship and we went diving. And it is unbelievable. The wildlife at Cocos Island is extraordinary. I saw a deal came through on my newsfeed today for $5,000. I think you can get a trip to Cocos Island and go diving. It's a lot of money in some people's pockets, but
it's a lot of money. But it is a bucket list kind of place. It's on my bucket list.
Look at that! I finished that.
Look at you!
Almost no time at all.
You ready for another one?
Yeah, sling it out.
All right.
Starting to dribble now. But Cocos Island remains one of the most extraordinary places I've ever been, and super blessed to go back there. And so we put the 3 castaways.
So the guards there they're living in paradise. They have very few problems in their lives, and suddenly they got 3 drug runners.
Not happy.
Yeah.
Not happy. And that was why the government was keen for us to get them off.
But
there.
you told your crew, hey, we're going to run out to Cocos, we'll do a little diving. So there was a couple of conflicting storylines there.
Oh, the thing with Cocos, like my crew all conservationists, and any conservationist you get an opportunity to go to Cocos, you were going to go there. And they didn't mind the fact that we're bringing back 3 drug runners. No one minded. Like we knew we'd have some Coast Guard guys on board to do security. And on the way back,
this boat seems like the kind of place that already has a brig like built in.
It is. Downstairs we've got what's the old armoury, so you can lock people in there. And Coast Guard made their choice on how. I showed them these are the areas that I would use, but up to you. And so they figured it out and did security. I'll tell you one funny story. That on the way back, we found a fad. It had a 20-litre container on it with a satellite tracker, a fishing aggregation device, but just a floating one, not anchored. And so it had a 20-litre container, a raft about 2 metres by 2 metres, maybe 9 feet by 9 feet in your language. No, I'm messing very good.
Yeah,
But anyway,
6 anyway.
And they had about a dozen boobies on it. And I remember I
The birds.
I looked at this. I thought, man, there's got to be some fish under that. So anyway, I got these three castaways. Popped me out here and I said, look, we don't have a lot of food left. Here's some fishing gear. Catch yourself some dinner. And they end up catching about a dozen tuna. And I jumped in the water. I speared 3 mahi-mahi.
So everybody's having a good time.
Yeah, it was good. Once they got on board, I didn't have any problems with them. But they stood to lose a lot. Like you assault a Coast Guard guy, it's the same as assaulting a police officer. And once they got on board here, they knew if they caused any trouble, then they are going to be in serious trouble. At the moment, there's some video of them transferring some goods at sea,
but
no evidence. No evidence that would stand up in court in terms of prosecution.
Yeah.
So at the moment, they're free men. But if they were to try escaping or do something stupid on the boat, they're in trouble. And after the first day, I remember thinking, probably won't have problems from these guys. They will have an awkward conversation with the Coast Guard when they get back into Golfito. So in the end,
but scuttling was a good move then.
Yeah. If you're a drug runner, you're about to be caught. Scuttle your boat, I guess, is a lesson from that. But I tell you though, the captain, dangerous man. I wouldn't want to mess with him.
Oh yeah,
I hope he's not watching
they
this
looked a little
podcast.
shifty, huh?
Yeah. Interestingly, one of them was just a kid. I think he was 18, and then one of them 22. But it turns out one of them is the son of a very well-known person involved in certain trade. But the captain, I remember. Well, there was some video of him, and when he thinks you're looking at him, he would sort of behave in a certain way. But as soon as he thought he wasn't being watched, is the manner of him, definitely a dangerous man. I wouldn't cross him, I wouldn't cross him. Hope he's not watching this.
I'm sure only 2 or 3 people are going to watch this video.
When you're saying, look, when your last one had 35,000 views.
Yeah, but that was an anomaly.
Anyway, that was a crazy adventure, but the highlight of that was Cocos Island.
Yeah.
One of the most extraordinary places on earth. And, it's one of the reasons I'm keen to support Costa Rica and the CMAR patrols. We get to go out and protect what is one of the world's greatest national parks. And that's what presses my buttons. I'll tell you one other story was we mentioned very briefly the Chinese fleet. So we had a guy, Ian Urbina, he was a former New York Times journalist, won a Pulitzer Prize for his journalism on something. Can't remember what. But anyway, he's filming some stuff for Netflix, and he came on the boat. He's got a thing called the Outlaw Ocean Project, where he does every month. There's an article that comes out, and he was the one that exposed the slave trade on Chinese boats. Anyway, he said, "Look, I want to go out and chase the Chinese fleet west of Galapagos." I was like,
so of course he goes to find the guy that's already boarded an Arctic whaling boat.
So. We picked him
First
up.
phone call.
We picked him up in Galapagos, and we went out, and it is mind blowing what's happening out there. So we hit the vessels about 50 miles outside of Ecuadorian waters, and we think there was over 500 boats in this fleet. Look, at one point at night, and these boats are big, like between 70 and 90 meters long, so like 200 feet long.
Those are the motherships.
They're all motherships. There's no small boats. They're
I
all
thought they
motherships.
sent out little guys.
There's no little guys. So every boat has along the side, maybe it's got these automated things dropping down squid lures, and each maybe 10 to 20 squid lures on every line. There's about man, maybe 80 or 90 of them down this side, 80 or 90 of them down this side. Massive lights, huge generator, putting out each light, I think they're 5 kilowatt lights, and there's probably 100 of them each side. This is a massive operation. So a single boat is a massive operation, and there's something like 500 of these things here. And at one stage, there was on the second night, once we got in amongst the fleet, on the first night, we went up, so we kept this boat kind of hidden. We put the rib in the water, and we went up to this boat. We pretended we were filming a fishing show for New Zealand. Can we come on your boat? And one of the boats let us on board. And so we got all through their boat to go and look at it and talk to the crew, and they were, the squid fleet is very highly regarded in China. It's one of the guy called it, the translation was a hero fleet. And China, they extract a huge volume of squid from around the world now. And the squid fishery is arguably the least regulated on the planet. And China thus far has refused to enter into any negotiations. If you look at fish like yellowfin, there's treaties that basically says how much different countries can take in international waters. The squid fishery, there's no regulation. There's nothing that says China can only take 1 million tonnes or 100,000 tonnes or whatever. There's nothing like that. And so it's this rampant fleet out of control. And it's expanding. Like this, even 2 years ago, there's way more boats than there were 2 years ago. And one of the captains we were talking to, he was like, "Oh, the squid fishery is not what it used to be." Like there's 500 a year. Like it's a little surprise. And it's a who's who of illegal fishing activity there. Like there was, so Ian Urbina had been following a number of these boats for quite a period of time. There was the one that got shot at by the Argentinian Navy for fishing illegally in Argentina. There was one that dropped in 2 dead bodies in a port, I think in Peru, and they refused to fly the bodies back to China, or it may have been Indonesia. I think it was Indonesian crew on that one. They refused to fly the bodies back. Another one turned up in port, and there was like there was only one body on board this time. A number of them being caught fishing illegally. They dumped their waste at sea. They pumped their bilge water over at sea. A little side on that. There's Panamanian boats that have quota to fish in in Costa Rican waters. Mm-hmm. They continue to dump their oil. So the last time we were in Golfito, so they come into Golfito, they might do a bit of maintenance on nets, and they maybe get some supplies on board. And some of these boats have quota to fish legally in Costa Rica, but they are so naughty in port. If you go to Manta in Ecuador, that's where most of these boats home port. A lot of them have a home port in Manta. Every day there's oil slicks coming past you every day, and Manta don't even bother reporting it because it's common practice. But those boats, they bring their same habits into Golfito. So last time I was in Golfito, we saw this slick coming past us. We followed it up to the boat, and I went up and had a chat to the captain, and the captain basically told me to piss off. Yeah. And it's one of the sad, Costa Rica has good laws over that sort of thing, but it needs
poor enforcement.
Yeah, law enforcement. So in that case, we notified the Coast Guard, and I think they went out and had a chat to them. But Costa Rica, this is an unbelievably beautiful place, and to have those foreign boats coming in, even they fish legally, some of them in Costa Rican waters, but to bring that sort of behaviour to the inner waters is quite appalling, really.
It is.
I don't know how I got onto that. Sort of sidetracked.
Can we wrap this up on a good note? What's positive about the scene these days? What's positive about the conservation efforts of the Costa Ricans?
The positive news, certainly the expansion of that CMAR MPA, and there's growing recognition.
Marine protected area.
Marine protected area. CMAR, it is a big deal what they've created there, yeah. And
this is inter-country Panama, Ecuador, Costa Rica, Nicaragua,
Colombia.
I'm just making up countries now.
Yeah. Not Nicaragua, but yeah. So Costa Rica, Ecuador, Panama, Colombia. Those 4 countries all got together to create what probably will become the world's greatest MPA, I believe. And, encompassing Galapagos, Cocos, Coimbra, and Malpelo Islands, all World Heritage Sites. Mm-hmm. And I think there's increasing recognition in Costa Rica that there needs to be additional resource put into marine protected areas and into protected national parks. But Costa Rica at the moment, there's not a lot of money to go into that. It's a nice thing, isn't it?
This might be a 2-part series, Pete. So if it goes to part 1 and part 2, legally by treaty with the Costa Rican government, we can drink 6 beers each.
Can you double my fee?
I can. Yeah, it's consider it doubled. It's okay. So many sponsors are going to be flooding your inboxes from this interview.
I look forward to
this
that, mate.
is just going to pay for itself. I mean, we have a huge, huge audience, and they're all rich, and they all love to give money for conservation.
And they come and crew on my boat for a while too.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. We actually do have people in those chats. I can tell that Nick is your social media front guy, so he has just entered some of the chats, and he is already disseminating information for how divorced rich white guys can help out with conservation efforts.
There was a message this morning from someone saying they do beach cleanups and they want some qualified scuba guys or something.
It's pronounced beach cleanups.
Beach cleanups. Did I say that correct? What the fuck? Anyway,
the interviews always
mate,
go downhill at the end. Don't worry. Nobody watches the end.
Yeah. They all get bored at about minute 6 or 7, and this guy's just dribbling. He can't even swing a sentence
we're
together.
in an hour and 20 minutes here. Nobody's watching this. That's not true. At least 6 people are going to watch this.
Well, they're my crew.
Okay, 12. Yeah.
There we go.
How many people you got on board this boat?
7 at the moment.
And what's your full capacity?
30.
Oh wow! You got places for 30 people to
Some of them may
shack
not
up
be. You're probably used to a certain level of luxury, and
I certainly am.
I know that
Tommy,
you got
totally different story.
White
Tommy
House on
is
top
all
of
the
hill
way.
there.
Yeah.
But 30 people. We typically like for example this weekend, I believe I think we'll end up with 4 rangers on board. We're taking another 2 to Santa Rosa Island, or one of the islands there. And we've got about 3 ton of equipment that we're taking out for them. So this weekend I think we'll be 12.
Santa Rosa. You mean the Murciélagos? Those are the islands off the Santa Rosa Park there?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I've never been there, so.
Oh, it's cool. Talk about. I mean, that's another place. If the weather holds, everybody who's a conservationist and diver is going to want to check that place out. It's an awesome, awesome place.
Somewhere here they've got bull sharks.
Yeah, that's
Where's
it.
that happen?
That's it. It's also, like, for me, I had one of the rare experiences of my life. I get to talk now, all right? Because I've been in the ocean, too. Up there at the Murciélagos, there's a spot, we call it the secret spot. Everybody knows about it. But it's an island, and then it's a little peninsula, rocky peninsula, and great little waves coming in from the south. But there are also waves coming in from the north. So you're surfing in on this wave, but you're looking at another swell coming towards the other direction. And it's the only time in my life I had this experience where the water was so clear and the wind was so light, and the waves were so perfectly formed that there was no reflection and no color and no pigment in the water, and it was just surfing in, and you could just look down at the rocks and the fish, and like it was a pane of glass.
Wow.
And it was a really,
Very
really
cool.
interesting place. So those Murciélagos are also a really, really special spot. So you'll enjoy that.
Very quickly, I'll tell you about my Emmy Award.
You won an Emmy?
When we were with Ian Urbina, he wanted some underwater.
Ian Urbina is a great name. It's got a nice flow to it.
He's rocking it these days, eh? Like he's one of the
New York
preeminent
Times guy, right?
What's that?
New York Times?
Yeah, that's him.
Writer?
Yeah. Anyway, so he wanted some underwater footage of the squid getting caught and stuff like that. He sort of asked around the cruise, anyone do this? And I was the only one stupid enough, but I figured this is my chance to get an Emmy. So they gave me a GoPro, right? So I put my dive gear on the front of the squid boat. So this has got this 100 lines going down either side. Jumped it was about 2 in the morning under the squid boat, and it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. So there was quite a bit of swell, and it's sort of sweeping me under the boat, and I'm looking up, and there's this glow coming down this side, and there's this automated lures going up and down. And so I've got my GoPro, and I got swept to about underneath the generator. And
Wait, you're under this 80-meter Chinese squid boat? Are you kidding?
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm not, because I thought this is my chance to get an Emmy. So anyway, so the surge kind of carried me to about 2/3 down underneath the boat, and then I was straight underneath what turned out to be the big generator. But suddenly it's like, and I'm thinking they've started the main engine, and they were getting a bit toey about us filming this. So now I'm thinking I'm already sucked under the prop,
and twisted through.
And then another swell kind of caught me and swept me right past the propeller. So I've got this GoPro this is my chance to get an Emmy. We get back to the boat. Ian, this footage is going to blow you away. Put it on the computer. It was shit. It was shit, so I didn't get an Emmy in the end. But it remains one of the stupidest things I've ever done.
Wow, because I also think that it somehow you could have been hooked by those squid lures and then brought up on board and processed.
I got caught on a couple, but the lines are quite light. And the ones I got caught on one which was they have guys on the corners throwing lures out from the side. So mostly it's automated, but there's maybe about 10 guys are tied up throwing in gaps in the lures. And I did get caught on one of those, and I ended up cutting it and going off.
Yeah,
that was a great eye opener for me. That squid fleet, eh?
Did you cut that line with your Bowie knife?
No, that knife got taken off me. The Japanese kept that knife.
They did. I never heard the end of that story.
Yeah. So so I hid this knife on the Shonamara when I boarded it, and then I managed to sneak it down into my room without them watching.
While you're on your 4 weeks heading
while I was
back
on my
to be
4-week trip
imprisoned
back to
in
Japan. It took about 2 weeks, and I managed to smuggle it into my room, hid it in the curtain, and then the Coast Guard come on to arrest me. And I had this cunning plan handing it to my lawyer, but of course they wouldn't let me see my lawyer. And at this stage, it's hidden in my gumboot. And the Coast Guard, head of the Coast Guard comes in. He said, "My name is Masashi Satoko, head of Japanese Coast Guard. So desu ne. I got something to declare. I arrest you." He said, "I arrest you." Their R's are quite tricky. So now, I arrest you, illegal boarding Japanese vessel.
I hope you used your 1 10-minute Japanese speech on him.
Well, no, I didn't know it by then. I knew a bit of Japanese because the crew of the Shonamara had been pretty generous teaching me anyway. But I said, actually, I've got something to declare as well. I didn't say it like that. I said, I've got something to declare as well. So there's like 30 Coast Guard guys in my room, all these officials or whatever. And I said, I've got this knife. I present it to you. But they confiscated it, so it was a shame.
Well, it's better than them cutting your head off with it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Happy days. Anyway, that squid fleet is, it would be nice to see the world reach an agreement on that, because the Chinese are so naughty what they're doing out there. And here's the thing with a fishery like that, is though that massive squid fleet is supporting a huge number of cetaceans and other things that we don't really know about. Like there's lots of areas in the world where the ecosystems are well defined.
Like having a squid permit, but actually fishing for snapper. In a way.
No, out there, this is deep water. Like this is kilometers deep. They're fishing at typically, I think, between 100 to 300 meters deep. So the squid go deep in the day to not get eaten by cetaceans, and then they come up at night when they're harder to go getting eaten, and they come up at night to feed. But there's a lot of those fisheries like that they're not well understood. Like, what are those squid supporting? Is it whales? Is it dolphin? Is it what is it supporting? You put 500 boats in there and clean it out. We don't know what ecosystem are they impacting. Is there a whole lot of whales we don't know about? There was a researcher that we met in Galapagos who was explaining about this what they thought was a very rare whale that they found. There's some pods of them in the Mediterranean. They have these in Galapagos. They've barely been researched. We know so little about them. One of the things with cetaceans, they've got two ways. They don't actually know how these whales find their prey. Most whales, they use sonar. This whale, and a great podcast person would know the name of them. I don't know the name. But these whales...
Check the hashtags at the end of the story. So we still won't have it.
So most of the cetaceans use sonar. And you'll hear them if you're ever involved in a whale rescue or whatever, you'll hear these whales going tick, 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 click, click, like that tickety noise, that little thing on their forehead, whatever.
You can hear them even on the beaches here.
So these very endangered whales, they don't have a sonar. How the fuck do they find the squid at night? They don't quite know. They think that they can smell something that the squid emits. There's certain chemicals that maybe get emitted, but it's a hypothesis at the moment. So the point I make, there's this ecosystem we know so little about. We've got 500 Chinese boats taking tons and tons every night. Each boat, what is the impact on the environment? We don't actually know, because there's no science based out there. And that's the problem we have with this fleet. There's no regulation whatsoever. There's nothing to say. The Chinese at the moment, they could take 1 million tons if they wanted. There's nothing to say they can't. And that's where the Chinese need to be pushed to the negotiating table. Maybe we should boycott Chinese something until they get to the negotiating table over that and many other things.
Okay, do you have any ideas on what we should ban then? what are the Chinese things that we can't do without?
Chinese things we can't deal without.
Yeah.
Just about
Ramen.
everything. Ramen.
Everybody ban ramen
So
until they
so-
stop squid fishing in an
Show my
unscientific manner.
ignorant. Is ramen Chinese?
I don't know, man. Is that racist to me to say? Probably is.
I don't know that it's China. It might be.
It's everybody.
You know, there's
everybody
going to be a
loves
million
ramen.
people commenting. Well, no, there'll be
No,
35,000
there's going to be like
people.
2 people commenting and saying, yes, you were racist, Justin. Turns out my wife is 10% Chinese. We just found out her sister did a 23andMe
DNA test.
DNA test, and now all the Chinese jokes are fair game.
How much is Neanderthal?
No, it wasn't a test on me. It was a test on my brilliant and beautiful wife. So that really explains a lot. Hey, Pete, thanks for joining into the madness. This was a really, really interesting talk. I appreciate you taking the time.
Justin, it did great having you on the ship, mate.
Yeah, Tommy, fantastic job.
Yeah, you're
God,
incredible.
I missed you, man.
Yeah, thanks for your contribution as well. Like, it was great.
Here it is.
Anytime.
There's the second contribution of the day. All right, Pete. We'll see you next time.
Salute.
Let us know any way that we can help as a community. This place is nice and people like to chip
I
in.
tell you, mate, I've been amazed. This community. There's such a good community spirit about this place.
Yeah.
We are super happy to be here, eh? And we hope we can come back here 3 or 4 times a year. And
Good. Well, we hope this is a home base for
out.
Modoc and for your whole crew. Until next time.
until next time. Cheers,
Tommy,
big guy.
salut. This Costa Rican life. Cheers.
Happy days.
Mm.